Okay. I've started the recording. Thanks.
And I guess David's next.
Thanks, Rob. My name is David Namiotka. I'm the director of the Finance Technology Services Group. My team is responsible for supporting the integration, but also the user security and allocations that get entered into eVA. John, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Jung Ho. I'm an application analyst in Finance Technology Service team. And I'm a backup of the main point of contact for support to the eVA integration.
I'll go next. I'm Amanda Kennedy. I'm also an application analyst with Finance Technology Services, and I'm the primary point of contact for eVA banner integration on the more technical side of things.
I'll go next. My name is Catherine Sorotin. I'm the Director of Purchasing and Fiscal Services for the Facilities Department. I oversee all of the construction, professional services, and some of the facilities, maintenance, repair, and operations procurements. I also oversee 2 accounts payable technicians who process primarily the pay applications and invoices coming through my construction department. So we obviously are also interested in seeing what this product can do. Thank you.
I'm Sarah Siddle, and I'm the Strategic Sourcing Manager in Purchasing.
Hi, I'm Susie Wiedemann. I work for the Office of Admissions as the Finance and HR Director, and I am an eVA end user.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Excuse me. I think we have everybody marked. So if you would like to take it away.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'm going to share my desktop. I will jump around. I know in the interest of time, you guys will keep me fair. We're good till 2 o'clock, right? So I have one slide that I'm going to show you, then we'll jump into the demo. I only bring this slide up because it's, just the ground set here. Let me bring up my slide deck. I'm not the best with PowerPoint. This slide, it really just kind of pinpoints the value prop for electronic invoicing. I know you guys are out in the market looking for what's there. I think you'll resonate with the bullets you see here. I'm not going to read them all, but you'll see on there, improve efficiency, right? How can we do things faster and smarter, reduce error rates, automate workflows, make it easier to create invoice, process invoice, as well as providing, improving data accuracy and compliance, right? If there are special rules we know need to be in place, as well as the automated matching and variance checks and making sure everything's auditable and findable, and transparency. We look at invoicing now, it's really, sometimes difficult for suppliers to understand where an invoice is, and for the purchasing and the finance sides to all be connected to understand where we are in the invoice process as it relates to purchasing and receiving and payment. So we're looking at that from a value proposition around improving transparency and ultimately cost savings, right? Reducing some paper, reducing some time in processing, getting the suppliers paid faster, right? It's important to the suppliers. And then potentially later looking at, could you enable an early discount program if need be? That's why it's in red. It's more of a potential than a absolute. But I think looking and knowing what you guys saw in your RFP, it kind of does align statement of needs. When I saw it, I thought it was very interesting how quickly that aligns, right? So that is the end of the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll jump into the application. I am going to be jumping back and forth as I go through here. I can see I see the folks that are on camera. If you want me to stop, raise your hand, interject. I will not be upset. Again, this is not a sales demo. We wanted to show you guys kind of what the capabilities are in this suite. Knowing that we're going down and working on a pilot for an e-invoice. We wanted to allow you to have a chance to see it, ask questions, and hopefully understand the solution a little bit better. So I just logged in as myself as an administrator. Not going to spend a lot of time on here. Well, remember that first slide I said, hey, there's this idea of information or transparency or understanding of where we are from a business perspective related to invoices, right? I just logged in. This is a example. This is not full-fledged. This is customizable, but this is an example dashboard. I spent 0 time configuring this dashboard, but for demo purposes, this is an out-of-the-box standard accounts payable clerk dashboard. So somebody from finance log in to see where we stand from the business of invoicing inside of the purchasing solution. So this is acquisition. So if you think like OCR, things coming from an email box or things that are kind of on their way in. So it gives me an idea of what's coming in. In process, these are things that are being worked through the approval cycle. So quickly I can link into those if I need be. Okay to pay. This is passed through all the, what I consider the approvals process inside of the procurement solution, and is now ready to go to finance to be paid, right? And this model, I think you guys kind of follow a very similar model that, procurement can tell you okay to pay, but it's not the processing of the payment. So it's saying I've got 0 that are ready to be paid. And then if there was an early payment program, invoked, you have a bucket of items that are, if you pay this early, you'll get a discount type of thing to give them. But I'm just illustrating this from the standpoint of giving you information, right? There's also a lot of other information on this dashboard. This will be pared down through the pilot program to make a meaningful dashboard for the pilot startup. But let me go through a couple things on here very quickly. So action list, right? This is just, hey, the idea of in the next 15 days, these invoices are due. I need to maybe escalate this to someone else. I can see where it is. Right now it's an AP review. These other 2 are in business review. I can take some action on. I have awareness of where I stand from the business of processing invoices. There's also a widget here to the right telling me, okay, where are my invoices now by status? I only have 3 statuses in this demo environment. AP is accounts payable review. Business review is after accounts payable looked at it, we're going to give it to somebody from the business to approve. And buyer review are those things that get sent back to a buyer when it doesn't have a match. These are all completely figurable. I just want to say there's an analysis here. A couple of analysis around here is what category the goods and services are in. And then, how things are being paid, right? On contract, not on contract, if that's important to you, and the amounts. You can see here all of a sudden, oh, bad, somebody bought alcoholic beverages, UAT data. I'll blame Shane since we're in UAT. He likes to buy bourbon and UAT as his test case. And football equipment's on contract. Alcoholic beverages was off contract, and you can kind of see how these go through, and then some more analysis. So the analytic power of this solution to help you understand the overall business of invoicing is very powerful. We can develop these charts and put new charts and graphs in here. This thing, if you're curious, is a typical, I can add a widget, I can move a widget, do whatever I need to do to make this powerful without coding. If you have not heard before, and I'll just say it, the eVA platform and the eVA platform that's behind it is a SaaS solution. We actually host it in AWS. SaaS solution, it operates on configuration, not code. So changes are made through configuration because it is a SaaS solution. Allows us to more rapidly evolve and change things. It also avoids the time and effort it takes to write code and employ developers to do those types of things. So it is a no-code solution. So that is just a brief little look at, if I'm doing the business of an invoice, what can I do from a capability standpoint? And I'll do an example, but I just want to kind of run through this. Very simply on an invoice, you see I create an invoice. There's OCR and those kind of capabilities, as well as an invoice console. There's also a concept of invoice data capture, right? Whether you send it to I know almost everybody uniquely across the Commonwealth right now, or not uniquely, is using an email inbox of some sort or manner. Your suppliers send your emails to this email box. We will then pick it up and process it and do something with it, right? The eVA solution has the ability to support that as kind of the invoice data capture step. The reason why that's important and useful is it can allow us to bridge that gap from a change management perspective. We may not have to ask a supplier to put their invoices in a different way. A bridge to that might be just continue to send them to this inbox, and we will ingest them through OCR and AI to make them into invoice transactions. Okay. I think you'll see that typical in other places. You can also attach a file, and the file will get read in and go into an invoice. But those things are in the solution. Well, I will not demonstrate those today. Today I will talk about more of the what we consider a PO flip. For those, I think I heard a couple say they were online eVA users. If you take the concept of I have a purchase order and I can flip it to create the receipt, same concept exists for a purchase order to an invoice. The PO flip. Why is that important in the solution? It reduces errors, right? And makes it easier to do. It also brings forward all that data with you to prevent data issues and problems in the process. So I'm going to do an invoice and kind of go through the perfect example, if you will. But you guys feel free to stop me at any point to have questions, okay? So I'm going to go in as a supplier because and I think you guys in your business, right? The invoice kind of starts at the supplier, right? Your guys' current practice, I know, is to send an email to that email box. While that use case is still there, we will show how suppliers now will have visibility into their invoices through the eVA portal or the eVA portal and be able to initiate an invoice through a PO flip process, okay? Not saying they have to. Between two different screens. All right, so I am now logged in. Let me just go over here. I am logged in. I'm logged in as Cheryl M from Fisher Scientific. If anybody's used eVA before, actually, you guys may not have seen this, but this is what the supplier sees when they get an order, right? They have a listing of all their orders. I just filtered it to a particular order and saved it here just to make this go faster. This isn't a class on how they view orders, but this is the supplier's view of the order, right? This is one of your guys' orders from, I think, fairly long ago, but it's out of UAT, but it's a good representative. Fisher Scientific for this, whatever an auto strainer is in a service contract. You can see how much is ordered on it. You can see there's no necessarily receiving yet. We'll deal with that. But just like they can push a button here to create a delivery order and tell you it's coming, initiating a receipt, this invoice button will start the PO flip. So we'll ignore the three-way match at the moment. This is a playground environment, so I don't have a bunch of bells and whistles on here. But when I did this, when we talked about the PO flip process and reduction of error and better quality of data. So let's look at this invoice. It brought in who I was, my supplier field, my ship to, bill to, which PO it was, all the line items, and the amounts on those line items as well, okay? So it brought in just about everything the supplier has to do on an invoice. So what's remaining? They have to provide an invoice number, right? This is their tracking number in their external system. That is the extent of what is required for them to do a PO flip on an invoice, right? There'll be other business rules as we go through the pilot. We may need an additional field, ask for additional field, and don't worry about some of these fields that go away. Some of these fields that you don't recognize won't be here. But the basics of the invoice, for a supplier to generate an invoice, that was it. If you're doing an invoice off a PO, so I just generated an invoice for this 68,500, right? For each of these three PO lines, and I had all my amounts. So this was a very simple case. I didn't change any amounts. I'm just invoicing for exactly what's on the PO, okay? The supplier does have the visibility into seeing what his matching is, right? You can see here, I have no receiving done on this. Why didn't the system stop me? Anybody know why it didn't stop me? I tell you, because the system will allow you to have information about the matching. Your business rules and process tells you if you're going to proceed with that or not, right? You always have the ability to override if you need be, right? If there are special circumstances, but you'll have an approval process which will give you that visibility. Can the system stop it? Yes, it absolutely could stop it, but we tend to find and expect that will cause more problems than solve if you're required 100% three-way match with no deviation. Usually that you have that, you know, the human that can decide if it's okay to proceed or not, right? And that's what the solution I do. So all the supplier did was submit this, no different than sending it to the email inbox as their submission of an invoice. But what this did was now I have an electronic invoice in the system. You guys no longer have to have an AP person managing that inbox and keying it into somewhere else to then go check these three-way match. So let's go look on the other side. But before I go, does anybody have any questions on the supplier side of the invoice? It was a very quick flip. I think the biggest thing here is it efforts to make it easier for the supplier and reduce the errors. Yes, they could have adjusted the line amounts, and I'll show you another example after this that does that. But I wanted, yeah, I see a hand up.
Yes, a question. So what if the vendor decide to ask additional like shipping charge or any additional item? Can they
Yeah, he
do
can.
that
So
from here?
yeah, let me go back. I'll just do a different order for him. So let me clear this one out. Like I said, this is your guys' demo, so you guys tell me where you want to go. So this is my full list as Fisher Scientific of all, right? So let me just pick another one here. This one's, all right, so this one's been partially, so if I look here, ordered, again, this gets into visibility, right? So this Amanda SIP one, $58 had been ordered, 29, so it's partial received. Let's just, so I have visibility into that information. Again, I'll type in my unique number here. If I want to then add a line here for shipping cost, and we'll say it's $30. That's all they have to do. Right. So you can see it automatically adjusted. Now, the other part I mentioned before, let's say, you know, there's a bad example of one of a quantity, but let's say I got, you know, if I had to reduce this amount, I also could. So I could put $21. Still keeps my reference to my PO. And so let me save this and just kind of show you. All right, it kept my, so this first line here we added for shipping costs, there's no differentiation, right? As soon as I move this, again, it's going to recalculate this to let me have awareness. Green typically means, okay, right, I under invoiced, that's okay. Red typically is your guardrail if I go and do something like this. Now the system's not stopping me, but it's giving me a little bit of a heads up. And you guys will see the same thing on the invoice approval side as a buyer. But this is telling me you're probably, this is, you know, danger, but it's not going to prevent. And like I said, the rules can be set up to prevent, but that those strict business rules sometimes aren't as good versus having somebody see it and be able to accept or reject it if they have a business need for that overage. Okay. Any other questions on the supplier side of the invoice since I'm here?
Last thing, I don't know if we have time, but how about if the vendor decide to give us the discount and say, you know, can they change the term in here? I don't see any term.
If he wants to give a discount, they certainly can. The term lines themselves. We have to walk through the specific example you're looking for as far as terms. Terms we don't necessarily even have on the PO at the moment in that valuable sense of terms. But if, you know, if this was, okay, this was for this, you know, PO originally was, you know, something, and I want to reduce the amount, like I showed, I can go to the individual line and reduce the amount. I can add a separate line here and call it a discount, right? And it'll become a discount, not a shipping cost.
Okay, great.
Thank you. The missing, you know, if I do this in the current version of the solution, again, we'll get a little inside baseball here for you. The current version of the solution, you would have to put a minus in here. The next version, which we're going to soon, you would not have to put a minus. It would just be a whole number, and it would automatically know that it's discount and do a minus. So a little bit of nuance. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they're interested in on the supply side? The supply, like this is what he said, the PO flip is really easy for the supplier, right? And it's geared to reduction of data entry and improving the quality of the invoice that comes in. And there is full attachment capabilities in here as well. I just didn't highlight that. And when I generated it, it did generate an attachment. On the other one, I heard somebody else.
I'm just wondering from like a construction point of view, do you have any examples of like pay applications where you're, like paying certain percentages of values based on like work completed? And I think I'm just trying to like visualize this from that perspective.
So the PO itself, so walk me through your PO.
So the purchase orders are just set up typically, with the lump sum, and then there may be a change order amount, but the pay applications are obviously being submitted. And I'm like, because this screen is where the vendor's actually going in and like kind of creating their invoice in here. So
depends on how the PO is structured. Right.
Yeah.
Let's use this one. If this was that lump sum one, and we'll use a small lump sum, but let's just say it was, $200, right? If you were paying a percentage of this, right, then they could pay a percentage, right? If he's saying I'm paying 10%, if it's $20, right? They could do this, and he can keep invoicing this line over and over and over, and it would keep a record of that thing occurring as what had been invoiced. So if I was to come here and I'd already invoiced $20, it would show it. So yes, they could manually do this down. Now, what I would encourage, and I don't know how have to look at this construction PO and the building of it. And I've seen this in other services, right? Take construction out of it, other services where they structure the purchase order. So let's say there's a recurring monthly charge, right? Each and the PO has that monthly in there. So then they could say, okay, now I'm going to invoice you for Jan or July, or, if there are natural breaks that can be put into the purchase order, it might make it easier for the supplier on the invoice to not have to calculate it, but then would just have a line for individual breakdowns. I've seen it for retainage work that way too. Like if you had a retainage line that but the way the Ivalio solution is set up right now, it is driven off of these PO lines. You can certainly break them up into other things, and you can have ad hoc things, but that would be how that percentage works. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of flexibility, but we got to set up those use cases to see and a lot of it starts with how do you set up the PO, really to help you. Okay. Anybody have any other questions before I jump to the other side? I think you're probably more interesting side for you guys. So what this does here is replace the supplier sending an email to an email inbox, right? The other part of this that the suppliers get is an awareness of where it is in the process, right? So they don't have to call you and go, well, where's this invoice? When's it going to be paid? And they'll at least have an awareness of where it is in the process. Is it an okay to pay? Is it being paid? Is it been rejected? Is it in business review? So hopefully they bug you a little bit less, and be able to talk to you about that. Once this is paid, I'll come back to it. They do have a view into the payment side. So let me go over to on my other side. So I'm now back in my buyer side. I have a couple of shortcuts set up here. So let me go to, I think this one's the one I was using. Okay, good. So this one hasn't been invoiced, but I'm going to flop over to my invoices. So I'm looking at everybody's invoices. Again, for you guys, you would only see GMU stuff, right? That's your standard. I am superpower user right now. I see everything. But this screen does a decent job. And a lot of the Ivalio screens, whether you're looking at the order screen or the receipt screen, or now these new invoice screens, laid out very simple. So if you're an eVA user, this should look fairly familiar to you. But here are these invoices I created from the supply side. You notice I didn't run an integration. if you're familiar with eVA, you guys know that it's all one platform. So if it's on the supplier side or the buy side, it's the same thing. I didn't move data, no job ran. It's just we both have views into this same exact invoice transaction. Okay. So let's look at this first one that's in this queue. This was that first 68,000 one that I did without looking at it. You can see it's in a status of business review. And then the other one I did, you can see at 58,029 had been received. And now I have an invoice for 41. So this is the more complex, right? I do not have a three-way match. I got some combination of all over the place. And this one, I don't have any. I consider a two-way match between the PO and the invoice, but no receiving match. Okay. And then different statuses. And again, I'm going to just click into this first one. What you saw, what the supplier saw, and what you see on the buy side are very similar. Okay. Very similar fields: invoice header, invoice date, a link to the PO itself. Okay. The PO lines, and if you want to see the PO line, you just click here and you can view that purchase order. If you forget what was there, who it was for, what it was for. If you need to look at an allocation, this one's a little bit, a little more detailed, right? 3 line items. So that's really the power of one of the great powers that they value in eVA solution is all these things existing in the same spot. So you can quickly jump from PO to receipt to invoice without having to go into a different solution. That's one of those transparency and ease of use benefits you guys will get, especially because I know you guys are PO users. Now that I'm looking at this invoice line as an approver, right? Very similar layout. This is one of the more powerful ones, right? It allows you to understand it, and they do work on an individual line level, not at the PO level. So individually for this line 1 of this PO, why is it green and not red here? So that's a good example. So I ordered one thing, and I am invoicing one thing for 51,000, although I have 0 receiving. And we may adjust this, but out of the box, that value when you have 0 receiving doesn't incorporate it into that calculation. That's why it's green. If I had 1 receiving, it'd still be green. If I had 0.1 receiving, then it would go red because now it knows. So it's just a little bit of nuance for why this is 0 is because there is no receiving. We'll look into that to see if we need to adjust, but that's why, it doesn't assume that I necessarily need to have it. There are other rules that will stop this from processing based on that, but this is just a convenience for the end user to quickly understand, do I have a 3-way match? Do I have a 2-way match? So this is green because I have a good 2-way match. Can't match anything, so it doesn't know about if you intended to have a 3-way match. Okay. But it looks exactly the same as you saw on the other side. What's new? There is the ability to track payment types, but the biggest thing new on the buyer side is the allocations. Right? How am I going to pay for this? Now, my view is much longer because I'm administrator, so I see all 32 possible elements. You guys only see your 5 or 6 you're using. But as I'm reviewing this invoice, I have the awareness, it's copied forward, brought forward from the PO, how it's going to be paid for, right? I didn't pipe any of this in. I also have the ability to make a change to it. So, the purchase order being your encumbrance, right? Where you say, this is how I intend to pay for it. If you get to the invoice and need to change that decision, you don't have to go back to the purchase order to change it. You can change your invoice and say, and change how you are paying for this at time of invoice. So I see a hand up. Is that Quinn?
Oh, sorry. Well,
No, it's okay.
Can you go up a little bit on the top?
Sure.
If you don't mind, thank you. So, I'm sorry, in the middle, go down a little more on the line item.
Sure.
Can you go? Okay. So I can see that you have a unit price, the amount, but where's the remaining balance of, because I think in a lot of cases when the invoice come, one PO can pay multiple invoices. And then right now in banner, we can see the remaining balance of the PO per line item. And
Right,
here
so
I just see the unit price and the amount. I mean,
So let me-
this is the quantity only one, but sometimes we have like 10 on the quantity, but the invoice only 2 and 3.
Yeah, this was a bad. I mean, this was just whatever the PO had on it. What you see here is these quantities and came directly from the PO. So let me back up and talk to a couple things you mentioned. You said, hey, we typically get one invoice covering multiple purchase orders. Is that true?
No, one purchase order for multiple invoices, and
That's
we
right.
want to see the remaining
Yep.
balance of the
Yep.
PO per line item.
Yep. I will run a different example for you to show you. Let me see the other example. I had it a little bit better. This one actually had it a little bit better. Let me just double check. This is still the one, but let's do this. Doesn't let me do halves. I have to find another example. Test data is not great, but if when you do this, to your point, if the quantity from the PO was 5 and this was 1, you will see it over here. See this quantity ordered, quantity received. This is actually a good example, right? So I ordered 2, and that's where you will see the calculation, right? So I've ordered 2, I've received 1, right? So it tells you how much you have left to do.
So the question is receive, sorry. The receive mean that somebody have to go to eVA and complete the receiver to be able to show the receive equal to 1. What if they don't go in eVA and receive? They just go to the approval flow and say, I approve the payment.
So that would be the other example I showed, and it would look like, which one was it? This one. So this one doesn't have a receipt, right? And I don't know Joel or I think there's some other tech folks. I didn't know, do you guys do receiving in eVA and
No, we don't receive an eVA.
Okay.
Very little,
That's fine.
very little.
That's fine.
And all our invoices approved.
So it would look like this. So in this example would be like yours. I just didn't have the quantity is different. So in your example, you would have something here, let's say 10, right? You ordered 10 things, but this invoice was only for 1. So you would have, I bring this screen up because it shows the bigger details in that pop-up. But you would see your PO quantity, let's say was 10, and your receipt would be 0, your invoice quantity would be 1. And so you would be able to see it that way. There are also other fields for remaining quantity, but in that view, but this would be where you would understand those differences here, right? Does that make sense? So in your case, this would always be 0 for the receipts if you don't have a receipt. But if you, in your scenario, if I am paying this down through multiple invoices, this would always say 10, right? For every time you ran an invoice against this particular line. And in this case, it'd be 1, but you'd see multiple rows in here. If you had 15 invoices, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think I still don't see the remaining balance. Like the PO total and minus what we
it would
pay.
be logical, right? This is what's remaining. But there are fields for that. It's a matter of do we display it or not. So that's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as long as you think it's available, because I think it's important for the AP to know that we have $10, we pay 2, we still have $8 left, something like that.
Yeah, there is definitely remaining balance. It's how they come across. Like if I look at this right from here, if I was to look, like you can see here, logically it's almost $700 here. I forget about receipt, but I've paid this much. So what's the remaining balance? I believe the system has a remaining balance, and Joel, I'll just take a note to double check. I've seen it. It's just not out of the box sitting there on the field. Okay. All right, so let me go back to my invoice to see if you guys have anything the supplier can do, the buyer can do. So that same flip process, if needed, and if we allow you to do it, you can also do it just like the supplier. So I'm the buyer now, and let's say somebody emailed you something and you just want to be nice and put it in for them, or for whatever business reason you might have that you're going to initiate this invoice yourself, it is the same tax process. Nothing more to that. Anybody have questions? Anybody have questions on just the basics of how to flip an invoice and how it gets in? And then I'll work into kind of probably the more meatier part for you guys. What is the workflow like, and what's that act like once it starts processing?
I have a suggestion.
Sure.
I see that we only have 20 minutes left, and we probably have a lot of questions, and we'll use all 20 minutes. So after this meeting, I think what would be good is, we're doing an RFP right now for invoice automation. And what we've done is we made a list of 200 questions that we wanted the private companies to answer as part of the RFP process. And within those questions, obviously, there's a bunch you don't need to answer, like how long have you been in business and things that don't make sense. But there's a lot of really good questions in there that go through our use cases, and they point out a lot of the things that we think are complexities that can lead to invoice automation either succeeding or failing. And so if you'd be willing, we could send this to you after, and you can answer whatever you want. But I think it'll really tip you off to a lot of what our needs are for invoice automation. This flipping looks good. It's very interesting. There's a lot of other pieces. As you know, we recently, you might not know. So before we did this invoice automation, we tried to actually use Chrome River invoice automation, which was ultimately not a successful project. And so when we released this new RFP, we took everything we learned from that. So is that an option if we send you this spreadsheet after of all the questions that we think we have? And then you guys would fill that out. Is that possible? Anyone?
I think Cliff, I think it would be very helpful for us to understand your business needs. So yeah, we will certainly take a whack at that. And Barb, I'm answering for you and Mel. So, but we will get the group together and go through and answer what we're able to answer.
And Cliff, I did read it when it came out from the other side of the house. We're like, what is this thing? And it is a, skimming, right? I didn't answer every question, but I was asked from the standpoint, is there any questions in there that are like pitfalls? No. There's always nuances to how you answer them, but I think it is a fairly good match and will help you understand. And if there's, in the 20 minutes range, I think you guys understand PO Flip. There's not a lot to demo in the demo side right now, besides flipping. If there are any other topics in the 20 minutes that you guys want to go through, we can certainly talk. Some might be demos, some might just be talks.
So I have a few, and I guess those will be referenced on the sheet we send you. So, we're looking for a solution that'll cover the whole university. So POs are the majority, but not the entire set of functionality that we need to cover. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Subrecipients, grants. I don't know how familiar you are with this, but these are things that work through sponsored programs, and they don't go through the purchasing department. They're a whole separate category. They're exempt from competition. And so the accounts payable department here still pays these invoices. Purchasing's got nothing to do with it. But so there's nothing in eVA, but there are 1,000, we call them general encumbrances. They're set up in Banner, but they're not an eVA. And so we still have to pay these invoices, $1,500 a year. And as you get into it, you're going to see that there's a bunch of cases where we don't set up a PO, but invoices come in. Kat, do we pay invoices? Do we set up a purchase order for Dominion Energy?
No, I don't think so.
Right. So like
Yeah.
the local electricity provider,
Right.
we get 300 invoices from them a year. So does the system accommodate non-PO based invoice
Yeah.
functionality?
Yeah, its simple answer is yes. So I can come here. I was showing you PO based, right? Non-PO based, it's the exact same process, but you don't have, you basically are just either invoicing through, an OCR or something else, right? Or these line items just aren't tied to a purchase order. Just like you saw me do that shipping line. I can have any variety of invoice. We recognize there's a need. Obviously, not all invoices are backed by a PO, right? Guest lecture or whatever reason you have to pay this invoice, you can pay an invoice without the PO reference.
Okay.
So yeah, but the process is exactly the same. You just don't have a line item, and obviously it doesn't do any matching to three ways because it doesn't exist. Good.
So, question, this is Queen. How about blanket PO, Cliff? Because I know for blanket PO, we don't have any FOPO allocation in Banner.
Right.
So, but in eVA,
Sorry,
we do have, for eVA, we do have the FOPO allocation. So I'm trying to figure out how it's going to work.
Well, we have both types of blankets. We have an encumbered blanket, and then we have right.
Yeah, unencumbered, which
Right,
in
so-
eVA is required FOPO, my understanding.
Is that true? I thought we could set up unencumbered blankets in eVA. That's easy to check on, I guess. Well, so one of the things we've struggled with is blanket orders seem to confuse a lot of the systems, right? You got a purchase order. It's for $2 million, but it's used by 70 different departments. And so then the way that we understand it's a valid contract, but the way we understand how to pay it is when the invoice comes in, it is routed according to the unit that actually ordered it. So sometimes I thought we could have unencumbered ones, but someone in my department can answer that very quickly. But so does the system contemplate blanket purchase orders, and can it actually accommodate ones that are unencumbered? That we do have unencumbered ones. They don't integrate with Banner, and so we bypass integration. And so you have these encumbered blanket orders, which are actually almost the same as a purchase order because those are for one focal. But you have these unencumbered ones, which any department can use. So does the system kind of think about that?
It's a nuance. When I want to be careful because I know I've heard people use blanket PO in different terminology, and I don't want to use it incorrectly. I also know, I think, Joel, we quote unquote turned off the blanket PO feature. That's what I said. I know you guys are doing blanket POs, but I think, Cliff, we probably just gotta. I think the answer is yes, but I just think we probably need to run that use case with you so I don't use the wrong definition of blanket PO with you guys. Like, just work the example. I think it'll support it. I just don't want to say yes right now, and if my definition of what a blanket PO doesn't match what you guys are doing, right? I want to make sure I got your definition, because it almost sounds like your definition of the wide one that anybody can use is more like a contract, and then they do a PO off it. But again, let's if there's a purchase order, it certainly can handle it on the invoice side, right? It's just a matter of how much of that invoice is going to be and who the or owning organization is.
All right, let me stop asking questions. There's a lot of other people on the call.
Sure.
I'll send you the list, the Excel list after, or maybe
Okay.
Sarah, you will send the blank list out to them so they can see the questions. But who else on the team has questions for everyone here?
Oh, don't be shy.
Well,
And Cliff, go ahead.
If not, can I have questions? Two questions that I have, and I maybe part of Cliff question, list of questionnaire as well. The integration, try to figure out what is your proposed
Sure.
when the system, when the invoice get approved,
Mhm.
what type of integration that you send it to us? Like on a nightly basis, daily, like a flat file API? I mean,
The
I know a whole
time,
bunch of stuff.
yeah, so let me bring this up. I mean, it's a little not technical, but it's fairly easy. So we have the ability to either do a flat file or real time. Right. I think you guys probably do real time right now in the PO. Is that I'm looking at Joel and
Correct.
Yes.
right. The very simple part of this, when the invoice gets to the okay to pay step, it can send a message in real time to an ERP saying this is okay to pay. It works similar to how you get the message to say, here's a PO, do you approve or deny it, right? The integration that happens today. It can be real time, it can be batch, right? But it depends on how we want to implement it. And then so the invoice integration, and I guess probably better off if I just show a picture. Let me just pull the picture up. I gotta jump into another. Bear with me. I did forget my stuff. Let me go to the other side. Should work. All right. And bear with me for this picture, but it sends an integration here at this step. Right. It got through all the okays, the pays, got to here, it sends a message over, it waits for a response. Right. The message going over is just a request for approval as well as the okay to pay file. Right. And then the integration system just sends back either a yes or a no. Right. Then later, when it's paid, you also the ability to send back a paid file. So let me go back to my Word doc. Right. So invoice integration really is the export side of it is okay to pay. Right. It triggers from a workflow step, usually just like the PO does. When it gets to a certain point, it says, send it. It waits for a response from you guys to say it's either good or bad. Right. Okay to pay. And then this is the basics of the okay to pay file. We are still working and would need somebody, like you, a good integration partner to say, what else do they possibly need? This is the out of the box, right? They guessed on certain fields they actually need. There'll be more, right? All the GL accounts and all the cost centers we use, not just the standard ones. Then the last part of this is you send back the yes or no, just like regular integration. And then we do have the ability to receive payment information. So if you've paid it for a voucher, and the end game of that is so a supplier and your end users will know that it has been paid, right? Giving that full picture. So it's a very similar model for you guys as you're using now for your PO, but it also can be a batch process if need be. So we send out the okay to pay. You guys look at it, say, yep, I'm going to approve it or not approve it. And then hopefully at the end of that, we also get back, and again, could be batch process as well, could be a nightly fee, could be a paid file, if you will, to help the invoice, to help them know and help the suppliers know that the check's been written or the payment's been processed. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And how about I'm trying to figure out the year-end process. Do you have any? I guess let me take the step back. Any other agency or any high institution have been used your products?
No. So as far as eVA, right? We have not launched e-invoice with anyone yet, right? So we're looking at doing that pilot, starting in the summer here with a couple of key agencies, right? To start using this at a small pilot agencies perspective, and that will be the first eVA users using e-invoice as far as within the eVA solution.
Has iValua used the invoice process with any other customer in the world?
Yes. Yeah. They're so iValua as a company started a product manufacturing company. E-invoicing is a very big player for them. They have a lot of work put into their OCR AI to invoice data capture, integration with PeopleSoft, and they do a tremendous, like, there's compliance sets in there to allow it to be, across the U.S. to enforce all the different codes, different countries and nations. So yeah, invoicing is a fairly big part of iValue. We can get you references if need be. And I think there are a couple of other state organizations in the U.S. using invoicing as well on iValue. So Pete, I know NASPO has that information.
And Mark, I think you have a logo with GCI, which is sort of a consultant business. Are you with the state, or I'm
no, So I work for CGI right in your guys' backyard there, in Fairfax, and for the better part of the last since 2001, both myself and my boss, who's on here, Ishmael, have been running the EVA program in partnership with DGS. So I'm a quasi state employee, as I like to say, 20 some years, tenure at DGS.
Yeah, we asked Mark and Ishmael to join us today and really do the functional walkthrough for us, because we just received access to the playground, I think Mark called it, with the electronic invoicing functionality in it. So we are still getting our feet wet from the DGS side in this functionality. So,
can you accept an import of non-PO based invoices so that we could ultimately match them? And I'll give you the very specific use case. I mentioned it before. We have a very small part. It's probably 5%, but it's still significant for our sponsored programs that don't use the purchase order system. They put the purchase order data directly into Banner. They don't use eVA. And then the invoice comes in. We still need to match it like a PO, but they don't use the PO system. So what would be nice is if, so you got the PO process, got that, but on sponsored programs, we could send an export in, through whatever the appropriate way is, directly from Banner of the data that should be available for once the invoice comes in. And I'm sorry, I hope I said that clearly. It's a different mechanism of getting data into, say, into this module so that it ultimately can be matched.
So if I'm saying this right, Cliff, you're looking at, these POs happened in Banner. We'd like visibility into them in EVA so that we can understand it from how paying the invoice. Is that right?
Yes, let me just rephrase and make sure. So the normal process is PO created, integrates into Banner.
Right.
Invoice is going to come in. It's going to match against, I guess in this system, just assume it's a flip. It's going to match. It's already integrated. It sounds like it's going to work. We have the second scenario where it's almost in reverse. It goes straight into Banner. We never deal with EVA, but in this case, we don't want to have 3 separate systems for different types of invoices. And so what we would like is to have a way to take that data that was put directly into Banner and then set it up so that an invoice can still be OCR'd, it can still match, because otherwise we're going to have to manually do those 5% of all invoices that come in, because it's not going to be an EVA.
All right, so I would take it as you need a business process to support those external things being available for inside of EVA. And Joel, we've done other ones where, I don't know if we have a mix, but do we have any clients with a mix of native POs and import POs?
Well,
I have to stop on the phone. I was just curious. I didn't know if we had any other clients any other agencies that were doing, PO processing in EVA, as well as, potentially importing POs from that don't necessarily need to be delivered in EVA, right? But they just need to be in EVA for
yeah, I mean, GMU is they're actually importing their conforming P card orders into EVA today.
Okay.
So that's a third use case, although those don't have a match. Those are assumed. Right. We do that on the back end, but that's it. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Cool. I think there is a way. It's a matter of you guys giving us those business scenarios to say, hey, help us in this scenario. And usually there's a way to get there.
All right, so this was very helpful. Sarah on my team, if you don't mind, after to everyone on this call after, if you can send obviously a non-populated version just for DGS CGI of the questions we asked during the RFP. Again, you guys can skip whatever you want. I think that'll help actually advance the conversation. You'll see the types of things in that that we're looking for. And then I think we'll meet here and we can have a subsequent conversation if that works for you.
That sounds good.
Barb, you want that to come to you, that questionnaire, or you and Mel, or how do you?
Sarah, sure, Sarah, you can
We
send
can
it to me and
distribute it.
I can distribute it to our team.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Do you
Okay,
want
I'll send it.
Do you
Thank
want
you.
the whole RFP as well of what we asked?
Oh, we have that.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
gotta find it.
All right. And anyone else on the George Mason team want to say something? I'm sorry if Wynn and I talked the whole time and we prevented anyone from speaking. Anyone else?
Hey, Cliff, this is Ismail. Just one quick question. At some point in this journey, if you would be willing to talk about the challenges you faced in the previous e-invoice automation project, that'll be really helpful in terms of us understanding where the challenges would be in this also, right?
Yeah. As a tip on the questionnaire we send you, you'll see one section that says, does your out of the box functionality provide the following? Those were the 25 things that we had an exact problem with. So, but yes, I'm happy to have a subsequent meeting. So it sounds like if you guys will fill that spreadsheet out, send it back to us, and then we can have a subsequent discussion of which of those were absolute deal breakers and which are things that are nice to have.
Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
that would be fine.
Thank
Great.
you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for putting this together. And we'll talk further.
Thank you guys. Appreciate
Great,
it.
thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.